Alright, so we just got some pretty crazy news regarding Sonic X Shadow Generations, and it might result in us getting another playable character for Shadow Generations. So news broke that the Japanese website for Sonic X Shadow Generations included a few things that the American site did not. And very similar to the American site, you're able to switch between the games of Sonic Generations and Shadow Generations on there and be able to click on each individual character to learn more about them. But when you take a look at the Japanese site, you actually see modern and classic Sonic here, as you should. But the thing is when you switch over to Shadow Generations, it includes Shadow and some additional information on him, but it also has another square where it says coming soon. Very similar to what it looks like on the Sonic Generations side, where that looks like it would be another character coming to the game. And that's a really interesting thing to consider, and definitely something I did not see coming for Shadow Generations. I definitely did not see us getting a new playable character inside of this. And that's considering we all thought that this game was going to be pretty short, and even Azuka saying that this game is going to be shorter than the normal Generations. But if this does happen to be a new playable character, I am super ecstatic to play with whoever this character is going to be. But within this video, I'm going to try to guess on who that's going to be and give my predictions on who I think this playable character is going to end up being. But also let me know down in the comments below who you would like to see playable inside of Shadow Generations. The first thing I will say about the playable characters is I do not see this being Terios or Black Doom. The reason I say that is because one, Black Doom has already been revealed to be a main character inside of this story and potentially even a main villain inside of this. And two, Terios has already been announced as a skin for Shadow. I don't really see why they would keep this hidden and saying coming soon if they've already revealed that character. One potential outcome they could potentially make with Black Doom is potentially making something like a Doom Shadow. Or something along the lines like Black Arms Shadow, where he's kind of been completely controlled by his Black Arms side. We already see a lot of his Doom power starting to leak out and starting to awaken inside of Shadow. What if that completely took over his complete body? He could almost have a similar mind that he has to Shadow 2005 in the Dark story, where he's kind of only following orders by Black Doom. And that could just be kind of an alternate character to Shadow where he has different abilities and runs through different stages. And I think this would be a great way to show off a lot of his new abilities, considering his new wings or even potentially other stuff that Sega had in mind. I think one of the obvious picks would definitely be one of the Team Dark members as well within Rouge or Omega. If the game is going through Shadow's past, how do you not mention Rouge or Omega inside of Shadow's past? These guys have always been by Shadow's side and always been there for him. And that's in multiple games as well. So I think it would be a pretty obvious pick to go with one of the Team Dark members, but for instance, they only have one character listed here as coming soon. Could this potentially be two? Yes. But if we had to pick one, I personally would go with Omega. While I do love Rouge, and I would love to see Rouge come back as a playable character, as we haven't gotten a lot of Rouge content when it comes to the games, I think Omega deserves it just that much more. Omega is rarely ever playable, and he rarely gets any of the spotlight ever. And I think if you could truly show off a lot more of his gameplay and abilities, I think that'd be a really cool addition to the game, but I would be totally fine with either or, since I do really love Team Dark as a team. Just if they do Rouge, I just hope it's not super treasure hunty. I do really like treasure hunting, I just think that there's more to Rouge than just treasure hunting. Another option is Metal Sonic. There's a few reasons why Metal Sonic actually fits so well. One is because he was a partner with him in Sonic Rivals, and canon-wise, he has been a partner with him. And two, they're kind of brothers in a way where they both have been created by two different Eggmans inside of their family. Shadow obviously being created by Gerald Robotnik, and Metal Sonic obviously being created by Eggman. In a way, they're very close to each other. Yes, I understand that Metal Sonic is an entire robot, but I mean, hell, Shadow could be a robot too for all that we know. And the third reason is I think they wouldn't have to switch up the gameplay a bunch for Metal Sonic. You could easily fit him inside of the boost gameplay. The one reason I don't see people like Rouge and Omega making it as a playable character is you would have to make an entire different play style for them and a different gameplay for them. That would take a lot of time for them to do so, and if they just kind of made it similar to what Sonic is or even what Shadow is going to be for Metal Sonic, I think that would be a really easy way for them to add him into the game. The next up being Mephiles. Mephiles has never been a playable character, but fans have said that they've wanted him back for years now, and even me personally saying that he's one of my favorite villains inside of the series. What better way to bring back Mephiles than making him a playable character? People love this character and have been asking for years for him to bring him back, so why not make him playable and have all the crazy abilities that he's had in the 06 games? And again, very similar to what I'm saying with Rouge and Omega, if you're running through Shadow's past, how do you not talk about Mephiles? While the events of Sonic 06 technically never happened, I still think that Mephiles is a huge part of Shadow's story. And while the events never existed, Crisis City is still inside of the main game of Sonic Generations, so Sonic 06 still does exist in some way. Mephiles has such cool abilities, such a cool design, and just an awesome personality for a villain. I would love to see him as a playable character and just see the absolute insane abilities he has. It'd be really cool to run around in his Shadow form and then being able to transform into his crystallized form halfway through a stage, kind of similar to what Shadow does with Chaos Control, and that giving you different abilities and other stuff like that. Another one that I think is somewhat of an unlikely pick, but I would really like to see, is Silver the Hedgehog. Shadow and Silver don't interact a bunch, just considering that Silver isn't in a lot of Sonic games. But in Sonic 06, they do help each other and are part of each other's stories quite a bit, considering that they are both hunting down different parts of the Sun God with Mephiles and Iblis. And again, if you're going to include Mephiles, you have to include Iblis in a way, considering that they are one being. So I guess that would make sense to potentially add Silver into being a playable character for a stage or two, but I just kind of think it's unlikely to add Silver here. As much as I love Silver and I will defend that guy till the day that I die, I just don't see it happening, but I really hope it does. Another one that I think is unlikely is Eggman or something along the Eggman family, like Maria or Gerald Robotnik. We obviously don't know a bunch about Gerald Robotnik or how he would move around, or if he would have some type of mech similar to Sonic Adventure 2 with Eggman. I don't see that happening, but I could potentially see Maria following you around. Not so much being a main character, but just kind of being a sidekick that follows you around, similar to Heroes, or even in Shadow to 05, where she just kind of follows you around in a stage telling you different things. Or maybe she just has some weird side missions where you just kind of walk around and gather some information about the world that Shadow is in. But if I had to pick, I think Eggman would be the most ideal out of the three. One thing that I will say, and that you might want to consider, is the only time we ever see modern Eggman inside of Sonic Generations is at the end of the game. While yes, he is controlling the time meter inside of the entire game, who's to say classic Eggman isn't doing that the whole time and modern Eggman isn't helping Shadow on the other end? Or even just trying to get some more information or trying to make Shadow join him in fighting Sonic. You could potentially bring back his mech gameplay, or even just give him an entirely different style with helping with like time meter different abilities and stuff like that. The time meter is already confirmed to be in Shadow Generation, so I could see that potentially working somehow. But out of all of the characters that I've listed so far, I think he is the most unlikely. Another one is Infinite. Infinite already having the Phantom Ruby, and if he still has the Phantom Ruby somehow, if that even exists anymore, he does manipulate time with that already with the likes of Mania and Forces. So I could potentially see the Infinite Ruby warping Infinite into Shadow's story somehow, with it basically being all about time of going through someone's past. And Shadow does interact with Infinite quite a bit in his episode Shadow and Forces, and is the biggest reason why Infinite took such drastic measures to become so strong. So I could potentially see Infinite doing that, and a lot of people want to see Infinite get a second chance inside of the Sonic series, and this would be a good way of doing that. And as a playable character, I think he would have some insane abilities with the likes of the Phantom Ruby. And the one that I think is actually the most likely is Dreamcast Shadow. The reason I don't say Classic Shadow is because Classic Shadow isn't a thing, and Sega has said that they will never make Classic Shadow a thing. The closest thing we've ever had to Classic Shadow was Classic Sonic in a Shadow suit. While in Generations, they do consider all the Dreamcast events just to be a part of modern Sonic's story, we can't forget that Dreamcast Sonic was almost a thing inside of Sonic Generations in the development of it. So there was talks and speculation that this could have potentially been a thing, and even Ryan Drummond coming back to voice that character, and ultimately him saying no. Who's to say they wouldn't take that idea and throw it on Shadow? I mean, it would be perfect for him, wouldn't it? The Dreamcast/GameCube era is where Shadow was introduced in Sonic Adventure 2, and even having games like Heroes. And even his own game of Shadow 2005. This would also open up the role for Dreamcast Shadow to be voiced by an old voice actor like David Humphries or even Jason Griffith. With voice actor Jason Griffith still being super active inside of the Sonic community, attending cons and also doing different stuff for different creators, I think that's a pretty likely chance if they were to go in this direction. And something I would love to see, considering I think that Jason Griffith is the best Shadow voice actor we've ever had. I think it's a very likely option. The one thing I don't see is him having more of a boost style. You would have to make it more adventure style, and that's the one thing I kind of see as unlikely, is it would be a lot of work to create an entire adventure stage for each of Shadow's stages, or having adventure-owned stages. As cool as it would be, it does kind of seem somewhat unlikely, and that's kind of the biggest thing with this character, is all of these characters seem unlikely, so who could they really bring over? And Dreamcast Shadow is the most likely in my list. I think that's the only thing that truly makes sense to me. If it's all about running through Shadow's past, I mean, for sure he would eventually run into something along the lines that looks like Shadow or is Shadow. I guess you could make the argument of having potentially a Shadow android being another character, but I think that's somewhat of unlikely for being a playable character. I could see a Shadow android boss fight, just not as a playable character. And the last option that I'll give you is simply just a new character. Sega has been on quite the kick of announcing new characters in all of their recent games, with Sonic Superstars having Trip, with Sonic Frontiers having Sage, and maybe even this game having a new character as well. Who this character could be is truly unknown, but I could see it happening and being a new character entirely for Shadow. But that's all that I've really thought of in my terms of predictions and who I think it's going to be for a playable character, and in my opinion, these are the only characters that made sense to me. But maybe I'm forgetting something, and maybe you thought of something while watching this video. Let me know in the comments below, and I would love to know your guys' opinions on this. And I truly can't wait to see who this playable character is going to be and how their gameplay actually works. But with all that being said, guys, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more Sonic content, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.